be the tap room, James Bonanno, 114 West Main, seeks permission to expand existing restaurant to the second floor with additional 45 seats, requiring relief for 435-31A11. 23 parking spaces required, 0 provided. Subject premises is D2 business zone. Is the applicant or a representative thereof here?
Yes, sir.
Welcome, gentlemen. Please state your name and address for the record.
James Bonanno, 114 West Main.
David Johnson, 114 West Main.
Great, and you have certificates of mailing for the neighbors? So, gentlemen, you want to put a restaurant on the second floor of an existing restaurant?
Correct.
All right. And what is on the second floor currently?
Two residential apartments.
And how many bedrooms are in those apartments?
One 2-bedroom in the front apartment and one 2-bedroom in the front apartment and 1 bedroom in the back.
So there's 3 bedrooms all total. And your intention is to gut that area and to put a 45 seat? Okay. This issue obviously would be a planning issue on how the people get up and down there, fire,
Sure.
that whole bit, elevators, whatever, handicap, whatever may be necessary. But we're going to be talking about the parking.
Right.
What we have here is a situation where the 23 additional spaces are going to be required, but 0 provided.
Right.
Now, do you have any provisions anywhere?
So now we currently operate an outdoor patio adjacent on the Suffolk County Courthouse property, which is 45 seats as well.
I see.
So what we're really looking to do with the upstairs is really shift our seasonal business from using the warmer months obviously out on the patio and shift that current business that we already have in the patio when it gets colder, we don't have the use of it, to shift that business upstairs. We don't have the demand. The plan is not to keep the second floor restaurant open when we, in the warmer summer months when we have the patio. We just don't have the demand for all 3, first floor, second floor, and patio, and frankly, even if we did, our kitchen's not large enough to be able to handle that demand. So we feel like it's a unique situation where we're taking business that we already have and parking that we're already fulfilling with the municipal lots, with the county courthouse being right there, and the rest of the parking, and just shifting that business from seasonally from outside to upstairs.
Okay. And you have some kind of an agreement, do you, with the county that they use the lot, or is it people just using the county lot?
From what I understand, that the Suffolk County Courthouse, people are allowed to park in there. Same thing with other venues that come to town, the other nightclubs that come to town. They've been using that lots as well. So yeah.
Did they get permission for that patio or what?
I did hear that there was an agreement that, to the village, that.
That they could use that, no, that they could have a patio.
Yes, they got
The
permission
patio
from
was
Suffolk
released
County.
with the county.
Yeah, that we have
Yeah,
covered,
well,
that's all done.
No, I mean, for them to use the patio, did the village have a?
Yes, planning board village.
We've had that for 2 seasons now.
And that's a leased parcel from the
That's a
county?
lease,
Suffolk
that
County.
land's leased from the county. We paid them rent, and that was done last spring, and, you know, through the planning board and everything.
Yeah, no way to get that, zoning. Yeah. Any questions from members? Any questions from members of the board? Do you have to, again, it's a planning issue, but do you have to increase your sewer line, or is this?
No, I mean, we've submitted our plans with Carol, and you know, like I said before, needing the 2 egresses. There is already a second egress, obviously, two apartments up there. But as far as sewers, no.
You guys are already hooked up
Are
and
you
all
hooked
that.
up
Again,
to-
that's a planning issue, and we'll let you.
Right.
Along that line,
Mr. Kearns?
have you been having any issues? Sometimes some of the places on Main Street have been having pumping issues with going through the sewer line, with the sewage. Any issues like that?
Yeah.
Stuff with overflow or stuff like that? Just because, only because every now and again you hear something like I have other friends that have places in the village, and they've had occasionally had trouble with when you're dealing with the sewer system. It's just curious,
Yes.
because we're worried about
It's
any
not
kind
gonna
of
work.
undue overflow on top of increasing the usage, that's all.
Right, and like I said, the usage, I think would be pretty similar, because, again, you know, the patios, you're doing the business in the warmer months, using that sewage, and then, guys, of like, in the next few weeks, it's gonna be pretty cut and dry. That's not being used, that's when we'd like to start using it, so pretty much, we expect to see the same similar business, same similar usage, just because.
But you're not having any issues, right?
We have, no, right now.
Any other questions?
Well, are you willing to agree or covenant that you won't use the patio if you are using the upstairs?
I mean, we don't plan on it, so it'd be fine.
Well, well, you don't plan, we want you to commit to not do it.
I just.
You know, because this, it seems to me there would be a great temptation to do the patio and upstairs and the main floor.
You know, like I started day like alive at 5 when the police, we heard everyone off the streets and they kind of got to get into the restaurants and like I could see like a day like that particular day, we could use it.
Well, but wait, your basic argument to try to convince us is that the total capacity is not going to change. In other words,
The
45 people in the
capacity
patio.
will change for upstairs. Not still.
Is there a time frame that you're looking at, like, for
Yeah, I
example,
know.
this past weekend, you know, it's considered fall, but the weather has been beautiful and seasonable or unseasonable right now. They had the feast this past week in St. Margherita, so
Right.
they were looking
Beautiful.
to designate the fall time, and we have an event like the feast on a Saturday, the weather's beautiful. There might be an overflow crowd there, and he may want to use the outdoor venue if he had the second story already completed and used. So, do you have sort of a time frame? I know the weather gets a little tricky.
It's up to the weather. My answer would be yes. You know, we were willing to say we want to use it in the summer. To answer your question,
How many seats are down on the first floor?
our dining room is 20, and then we have 16 high top seats in the bar area.
So what is that, 30, 41, 25 and 16?
20.
20,
36. Plus the bar itself too,
36.
right?
So I said 16.
And then
16 in the bar?
16 tables at the bar.
Oh, table,
There's high top tables in the bar area.
plus additional chairs in the bar, so. What's your
12
capacity?
seats. Our occupancy is 80. Seats would be 48,
Seats will be 48 on that first floor.
including the seats at the bar.
All right, and then you have 45 outside, and then you're looking for another 45 upstairs.
As I say,
Basically, there's no parking.
my concern is the bar.
Yeah. Parking's at a premium in that area. But you say you wouldn't be using the upstairs at the same time as the patio.
Right.
However,
Kitchen to the
all right, we'll have to think about this one.
Any other,
Whatever restrictions we might want to impose.
Right. any other questions from members of the board? Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me. Any member of the public who would like to speak for or against? Sir? Mr. Bojack? Gentlemen, if you just step aside, if you'd like to public speak.
Good evening, everybody. John Bojack, 890.
Evening, John.
It's going to be an interesting discussion. First of all, I'm in favor of the proposal. I think, this is what's happening in the village of Patchogue. We're seeing intensification of uses. This is just the beginning of a wave, I think. In fact, it's already begun. One bar, I think, is a good example of taking over the space and building up. This is what these guys are doing, and then they're entitled to do it. Although I would suggest to these gentlemen that they think about doing what Rumbar did, which is to build an atrium. And they built the top space, so they don't need any kind of side space. So they got their upper space, if they can do that. I don't know how much money these guys have. That might be a second floor and a top floor.
Are you saying go to a rooftop?
Go to a rooftop, right.
Which, by the way, in a lot of other
I want to hire
communities,
this guy.
in a lot of other communities, is the way a lot of people are going.
Right.
Well,
Bill
places
said
to
it.
go.
So we have an example of that in our village right now, and one bar is gonna be coming online, and that's how they've solved, in a way, part of their parking problem. And yes, I think there is some kind of parking issue, and we can't make believe that there isn't. And yes, there probably should be a covenant if they're gonna switch off from one to the other, because yes, you're right, there's a great temptation to use that space. But then again, I'm thinking about what space might be available. Yes, you can speak to the county about an actual lease for the park, the court space, an actual lease, like you said. The village has a new lot on Jennings. Maybe they can, just like Lombardi's, reach an agreement with the village for the use of that space and valet people back and forth. I think there's some space that maybe they just gotta look for. And maybe that might solve some of the parking issues, because otherwise, this is what we want in the village. We want an existing business already successful to become more successful. So it just has to not contribute to our parking problem, which is severe at the moment. So otherwise, I'm in favor of the proposal.
Thank you, Jose.
So now,
Anyone else who would like to speak for or against the application? I've been seeing none, Joan?
one thing you alluded to is, I'm on the parking committee with the chamber. And the village.
Great.
And a couple of ideas I had, working with David Kennedy from Chamber of Commerce was, one, the whole valet service. We're trying to figure out the trolley, and then when we got in touch with valet service, we started in early, I believe it was early August maybe. And, you know, every week, bi-weekly, I've been checking in with David to kind of see how that service has been going. Because I was concerned when I would be out front on a Friday night in summer at midnight, I'd actually see parking spaces on Main Street, and I realized our parking problem isn't as big in summer as it is coming to winter when certain venues start opening again and they kind of take up some of the parking. So I was worried that the valet service would get discouraged, because the way the deal we worked out with them is the public would pay, you know, $5 for the service. Originally, the restaurants were going to take on the bear and pitch in for it, but then we thought it might not be fair if, you know, one particular restaurant's using 30% of the parking and, you know, our particular customers might not, or vice versa. So we decided to have the public pay the $5, and then we said as a restaurant, those participating would validate that card. So if they came and ate dinner, as long as they spent, you know, $15 or whatever it was, we give them $5 back with their check. So speaking with David, you know, I'd call him and say, hey, are people using this valet service? And he's like, well, you know, we've only had 5 cars parked last night. I said, all right, well, let's, you know, give us some time, let people know about it. And I was just with him yesterday, and it's been the same thing, where it's not being used as much, the valet service. So I don't know if that's a reflection of the fall winter business hasn't grown enough, or if the word's not out yet, or if it's in a bad spot, which could be a combination of all three of those. But as far as parking goes, we are trying to take steps to alleviate. One other thing is, it's not, maybe not realized by everyone, is when you tally up the amount of employees on a Friday or Saturday night in the village between the restaurants, you're talking like a few hundred people, which is a few hundred cars. If the employees were to park not in the prime spots right next to the restaurants or right in the first row of the lots, that would alleviate probably most of the headache of the parking. So we've been taking steps where we thought we would partner with the taxi company, make them the premier or the official, and I realize there's taxi companies in the village that are approved and not come to learn. But the trade-off would be if we can get usage of a lot, whether it's a lot like the Bravo or Briarcliff, and have employees park there, and use a taxi company as a shuttle service to bring employees back and forth for the safety of the employees, so they're not walking the streets at night. And in return, the restaurants would push that particular taxi company when our customers say, hey, you know, can you call us a cab? Yes, call this XYZ company. They're, you know, we put signage in our restaurants' cars. So that's all stuff we're working on. I'm also the chairman of the restaurant committee in town, and at our last meeting, I asked the other fellow restaurant what's the parking gripe from your customers? Because it might be our clientele, or it might be that on our side of town, I think we have more parking than most because the courthouse that lot's pretty large. So I would think on the eastern part of town, some of that concentrated strip of restaurants were kind of on our own little island over there, between Paravel and Public House and Village Idiot and Gaia. Their lots over there, I've asked them, because our concern was the valet company would ditch out on us, saying we're not making the money we thought because we're not parking any cars. So at our last meeting at the end of August, it was, what's the parking gripe? And a lot of them said, well, it's kind of the same thing I was alluding to is, there seems to be some spaces now that might change come wintertime. What I'm alluding to is, we're taking steps to try to help the parking issue.
Alleviate the parking issue.
And I think on our end, we probably more parking than most, because the courthouse is big, Briar Cliffs, a lot of our customers, is busy there in the parking village. We park the parking village lot, Briar Cliff lot, so kind of on our end of the street.
You guys would better shape.
So, yeah, we're doing that shit.
So the Emporium's closed.
I don't need any names, but that's,
I think we all know.
if they're closed, there's plenty,
There's plenty of
we have plenty of parking. If they have a big show, that's when it
It's
sucks
tough,
at the front.
We understand. Any other questions then from members of the board? Ms. Wagner?
Do the businesses advertise the valet service, like in their windows and things like that? Is it advertised to your customers, like in your establishment?
Yeah, on anyone participating, there's a sheet, actually, Carol, the picture I showed you with the, our poster, there's a picture right on there, that says valet parking participant. You'll see it on there. One thing I've asked the chamber, not just the parking issues, but anything they'd like to get across to the public as far as fall festival or family night or whatever. I've preached a million times, if you can make us a nice looking digital poster or whatever it may be, something that the public can read. When you tally up all the restaurants, all our social media accounts, all our email newsletters, we're talking tens of thousands of people. So I told as myself as I chair the restaurant committee, if you can get me that information, I'll make sure it gets in the hands of all the fellow restaurant owners. So I just spoke to them a couple weeks ago, I said, can we get more literature so we can get it out to the public more? Which I think will help. I think, the signs work great, but people just it needs to be out in public more, that we actually have this great LA service that there's no parking issue. You can drop it off, if you're gonna eat, $5 is validated, and you go pick your car up and it's right in front, right there.
Any other questions? Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? No. Having seen none, no members of the public. Gentlemen, anything you want to add in closing? That'd be it. Thank you. I'll take a motion, please, Mr. Combs.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we close the application and adjourn to witnesses and join.
Motion made by Mr. Combs to close the application, second by Mr. Shabbat. All in favor? Aye. None opposed? Closed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay.